Hey, 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 it is Friday, October 17th, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on the West Coast. I am Brandon Beliso. This is Success Never Sleeps, where we as a collective of small business owners, in particular, martial arts school owners, try to figure out this thing called life. We want to create businesses that work for us versus us working for it. We want to build retirement. We want to build the ability to serve our family, our teams, and the community. And that's my passion and commitment. It is to you, the small school owner. And that's why today's subject, I think, is so exciting, how to get from a hobby business to creating the successful life for you with your martial arts love, your passion, your commitment. We're going to break that all down in a minute. But let's begin by thanking our sponsors. We have Market Muscles, Tucson, let me say Market Muscles, my studio, Kids Love Life Skills, LC Accounting, and Kin Creative. Again, all businesses that impact one martial arts. Our two schools driving close to 1,000 students, generating close to $2 million a year. The impact that each one of these services have is phenomenal, right? If you need martial arts supply, go to Tucson. You want a website, go to Market Muscles. CRM, right? That customer relationship management tool that, people can do events, people can pay for memberships, people can communicate with you. None better than my studio. Kids Love Life Skills. If you don't have a life skills component in your school, please, nobody goes to us for kicks and punches. They stay because of the character development. And it's something that I think is extremely overlooked in our industry, not mastered by many. And it's something you should go, really invest in. Set up a call with Mark or myself or anybody at Kids Love Life Skills, and we will get you on board. LC Accounting, you need a good bookkeeper, please. Don't use QuickBooks and do it all yourself in H&R Block. That is no way to get a level of professionalism. And that's going to be a big thing I'm going to lean in today a lot. And then Kin Creative, digital media is here to stay. If you're not running Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram, visiting things like Nextdoor, Yelp, take your pick. It's something I think is way, way overlooked in our industry. We don't find any value. And I am of the advocate, if you build it, they will come to a certain degree, but you don't market one way to 70 people. You market 70 ways to 70 people. You need digital media. Make no mistake. Make no mistake. I was talking to my friend Greg Escolta, who just came aboard with Kin, and he's got like 40 students in 3.5 weeks. He goes, that's never happened before. Well, because you never did digital media before, right? You never did that before. What's coming up? I looked at it today. We're 22 days away from It's Time Live Freedom. I'm very excited about this event. You can stay for 1 day, 2 days, or 4 days. I always recommend the 4 days because it is like a retreat. It is life-changing. We work on personal development. We work on your business. We work on wealth building. We work on every different element in your business to help you create your version of success. And as you come aboard, say hi. How you doing, Malloy? Malloy Mao. I know that's not your full name, sir, but I'm grateful that you're here. As you come aboard, say hello. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and it's a good day. Cool. Bob Poole from Goals Martial Arts. Always there. I can trust. And as I say, trust is the last true form of marketing. I can trust Bob will be here every Friday. I can. So sign up now. And if you stay for 4 days, enter the code FREEDOM, and you will get a $199 discount on the 4-day experience, which is the one I recommend. Somebody said, I can't take that time off from my school. I said, you need to take that time off for your school. I can't afford to come out there for 4 days. Then I said, then you need to. Because if you can't walk away from your school for 4 days and you can't afford to come out here to probably the best learning experience you're going to have that can really make a difference and impact your life, then you need to make that sacrifice, figure it out, come spend 4 days with us. Cool? All right. So what is everything about today? I was gathering some data for research, and I'm always looking into this. There's roughly like 15 million people practicing the martial arts in the United States in some form or another, right? Throughout the 15 million, I think it said. There's roughly 35 to 46,000 people teaching the martial arts in some form or another, whether it's online, whether it's a personal trainer that teaches martial arts, whether it's somebody in a nonprofit, park and rec, teaching out of a church, multi-purpose room. But there's only 10 to 14,000 full-time martial arts school employer. Now, even in that 10 to 14,000, stay with me now. How many of those actually sit in the 1%? The 1% is where you have a business that works for you. You have full-time employees, right? That level. I would think out of the 10 to 14,000 that it's a very small percent. Because I think it's roughly 20% of the industry. Well, what's 20% of 46,000, Marco? But figure it out really quick for me and put it in there. Right? So let's figure that, right? They say 20% of our industry. I believe it's 20% of the full-time operators. What's 20% of the full-time operators, Marco? Let's use 14,000. What's 20%? 700? 700, right? 700. Is that right, Marco? 20% of 14,000, which is high, right? But they say it's 10,000 to 14,000. Now, this number is important, so stay with me. What is it, Marco? I know Marco's going, man, he wants me to do math. I believe it's 700. Am I right? Man, what's going on there, Marco? Put it in. 2,800? 20% of 14,000. Oh, yeah. Because 10% of 14,000 is 1,400. So, 2,800. That's about right. If you look at the ATA, you look at Von Schmeling with his 30 plus schools, you look at Action Karate, they're up around 20 something, right? If you start piecemealing it all together, I would say 2,800 schools are out there making money profitably. Now, stay with me. There is that person, and I think it makes up the bulk of the 10,000 to 14,000 that are roughly, because the numbers are way overinflated in our industry, I would say roughly 50 to 100 students who are clearing about 60K a year, right? Clearing 60K a year take home. They're probably using their wife's medical insurance because their wife works a job. And they might even be supplementing their income with a second job. You know, it's very common someone teaches during the day from 9 to 5, goes to the school from, 6 to 9 at night, right? Or something of that nature. And I would think out of that 14,000, right, we're talking 2,800. 2,800 are actually doing this full time. I've seen varying numbers, but it's saying roughly 20% of this industry is making 90% of the wealth. Sound familiar, right? Much like our country. What is the percentage making the majority of the wealth, right? It's the same thing here. So my passion and commitment is to helping you move from a hobby business to a full-time success. Now, with that said, please do a real hard reality check. If you've created a job for yourself and you're a terrible boss, right? You're a terrible boss, then I'm going to ask you to rethink that. Now, I know people overinflate their numbers, and you know why they do that? They're embarrassed. That's it. It's a human thing. I'm embarrassed to say I'm really only making about 60K a year. I'm probably working 50, 60 hours a week. I teach all the classes, but once I pay my rent and everything else, I take home about 60K a year, right? Now, that might work fine in a rural part of the country that has low gas prices and low property rent and everything. I know someone paying $800 a month for like 2,000 square feet. Here, my rent is astronomical, so I need to make a lot more money, right? But I would say that's about our industry. In my 25 years, even as I research and do all the different things, look at AI, all these varying figures, I would say that's about right. Centuries Facebook page, I think they said, is about 14,000. And those 14,000 don't mean they're full-time operators, right? It doesn't mean that at all, at all. So who are you on that scale right now? And again, as you're coming aboard, say hi. Tell me where you're tuning in from. Tell me that you're here, please. I love to know who's with us. So where do you fall in there? Are you clearing, taking home 60K? Let's even be generous. Let's say 60K to 100K a year. you are taking home 60 to 100K. You're probably teaching all the classes, and you're probably running a school. If the rent is commercial level, you're probably in a school about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. You don't have to put it in the comment, but is that you? Right? Is that you? And if it is, and that's your version of success, then so be it. Okay, so be it. But if your genuine goal is to create a business that works for you, where you can take time off to come to It's Time Life Freedom, right? Where you can take and be able to save for your retirement, where you can take and be able to give your family and your team and the community that you serve, give back graciously, then this is the right place to be. Cool? And again, I want to know who you are. Don't sit in the sky there. Come say hello. And I count on Bob every week to be there and say hi to me, right? Right? Every time I hear Bob's name, I think of his mom. I think of the chocolate store. I think of Gold's. I think of all of it. And that's the beautiful thing about the relationships we cultivate here. So I think you don't know what you don't know. We just got off our group mentoring call, and we are going over teaching techniques and how to communicate with younger people. And a lot of it was really obvious when the day was done, but it's those aha moments. I could see it in their face going, wow, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, in our industry, it's challenging. There isn't a lot of common sense. Why? Because I think the majority of our operators, because they don't have working knowledge, we rely upon the feed at Facebook. We rely upon scrolling. And even scarier today, you're relying upon ChatGPT to tell you what you need to do to create your version of success. That to me is not only lazy, I think it's very irresponsible. If I'm going to go to ChatGPT, to give me an just pure face value advice on how to turn my business from a hobby to full time, that's really scary. That's really scary. I'm going to tell you that. And I leverage AI to the hilt. I'm in AI every day. I use it. It's a big part of my life. But my version of success may not be your version of success. And all ChatGPT does is pull all the data out there and says, wow, this school is successful because this school owner says they're making $10 billion a year. This one says they're successful because they have 20 students and they're happy. This one says, so the data is extremely skewed. So when it's trying to gather that information and give it to you, it's very blanket. Two, it's not designed strategically to fit your version of success. So let's begin there. If you want to get from being a hobby business to a full-time success, you need to define what success looks like for you. Is that 300 students taking home 250K a year? Does that mean you want to put 60K a year into your retirement? Does that mean you want to spend 10 grand a year on family vacations? Does that mean, what does that mean? And that's where I think, having data is real important. You'll hear it in any great company. I need data. I need data. I need data. I need data. I understand that. I understand the need for data. Data is very important because data does not lie. And if you tell me you're successful and your goal is 300 students and today you have 50, you're not successful. That's pure data, right? If your version of success is 300 students and you don't have it, then you are not at the level of success you desire. And once you decide that, you can begin to make fundamental changes. You with me? Okay, so hobby. Let's define that. Hobby, right? One of the 35,000 to 46,000 people out there. You might be a guy teaching online, right? There you go. You might be a guy who posts videos from your garage on self-defense techniques. You might be a guy who, is a hobbyist, works a day job, and likes to post TikTok videos of you, at 60 plus, but you're a really cool martial artist. And I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I see them every day. You could be those guys out there that criticize every martial arts, right? I don't know if they call it Bushido or whatever, and then these two Muay Thai kids or MMA kids out of the Philippines that spend time criticizing other martial artists, right? That's not us. We are owner operators running martial arts schools from a brick and mortar location. So that 35 to 46,000, unfortunately, they don't make up who we are. So we have to really lean hard into the 10 to 14,000 number, okay? Those are the school owners I'm going to focus on. But there's not a lot of data to back that up. People overinflate their numbers. They're hesitant to give real data, right? They're really hesitant to give data. So I want to be mindful of that. Some guy boasted he had 50 schools. And in the reality was they were all owned by other people. And they just simply associated and used this person's name. So again, be mindful of that. You need to create your version of success. Because if you're very clear on what that version of success is, then you methodically go out there and get the right learning and information you need to create that version of success. But if you have no idea, 300 students clearing 250K a year, whatever that number is, and more importantly, why? I have my number. My number is designed, at 63 years old to take care of me and my wife in retirement. It's going to take care of paying off our home. It's going to take care of creating college for my kids. It's going to take care of. So I'm very specific on why I have that number because that's important. Because when I speak to school owners, especially hobbyists, well, I want to make $1 million a year. Why? Why? Because the why is your purpose. The why is what's going to get you through those real dark days when you can barely make rent, right? Or in my days, I would work 7 days a week, 17 hours a day. I slept on that mat, because I wanted to save money on gas. And I had a 9 a.m. class. I would clean that school and hang flyers at midnight. I mean, those days, the lean years, it was only because of my love of martial arts and my love to impact lives that carried me through those dark days because those were tough, tough times. And there's a lot of schools today going through that, those tough, tough times. Okay. So get brutally honest with yourself. Who are you today? And I don't care if you have a big brick and mortar location and it looks all professional and ABC. At a heart level, are you at the level of success you truly believe you need to be at? I don't know. I don't know. So that's the first thing. Because once I'm clear on why I do what I do, then I set about creating a really strong business plan. How am I going to facilitate that? Right? If I need to make more money, am I going to take the money I make and buy real estate? I'm going to take the money I make and open another school. I'm going to take the money I make and maybe do it through the stock market. There's a lot of ways to make money. And my goal is to achieve that number. See, so it needs to be brutally clear. So when you cultivate that business plan, you have to ask yourself why. And I've invested in startups and people serve me up decks and we're going to be making this amount of money in a year. You don't know that. That's hypothetical. Where's that coming from? Well, based upon businesses similar to mine. Well, they're still not your business. There might be the same industry, the same product, but you are not them. Do you have the same discipline as them? Were you in the right place at the right time, the same opportunity? So even that's extremely skewed. So if you have a number, let's say it's $10. Okay, we have today. How are you going to make $10 today? Well, I have students paying for classes. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. The first student walks through the door will probably pay you 30, 40 bucks for that one class, correct? When you break it down. So you made your $10, but that's not going to grow your school. So I want you to really think about that. Because once you're clear on that number and once you're clear on that why, then you can write a business plan. And man, that business plan is at least 3 to 5 years. Please don't think in 1 year you're going to be at $1 million. That's not even realistic. There's nothing out there to support that. So once I'm certain of that, then I write that really strong business plan. And I think one of the most valuable parts of that business plan that moved me from being, just a teacher out there, teaching in the park and rec and a couple of health clubs to making it full time was I did a SWOT analysis. Write that down. SWOT analysis. And what that really focused on, number one, was what were my strengths? Well, I'm a great martial arts instructor. I knew that at that point. Am I much better now? Oh, God. I thought I was good. Today, I'm great. Right? Read the book, Good to Great by Jim Collins, by the way. How to get from good to great. I believe that's the other reason why so many people are moonlighting as a professional business and it's really just a hobby because they're good, but they're not great. And we know already when it comes to small businesses that most of them fail. So, you opening a small business, there's a better chance the odds are more in favor of you failing than you succeeding. Are you with me? Okay. So, just be mindful of that. And again, I don't say this in a derogatory way. I say this at a heart level to you. You know, I want you to be successful. There's a part of me that needs you to be successful. Right? I was reevaluating that the other day, Marco, and I was saying to myself, I try to end conversations by disconnecting myself from the school owner, anyone that's coming to me for consulting. I say, at the end of the day, it doesn't affect my bottom line. Doesn't affect my bottom line. I'll make the money I make. I'll do what I do. But you know what? I realized yesterday Noah Seidel hit 200 students. Noah came to me when he had 60 some odd students. And we celebrated yesterday. 200 is really an achievement. You know how hard it is to go from 65 to 200? You give me 400, I'll take you to six overnight. That train's out of the station. You got 400 students. All the infrastructure's there. All we got to do is a couple of tweaks. But to celebrate Noah at 200, it's a miracle for him. And that's a beautiful thing. So you have to do the SWOT analysis. All right. What are your strengths? Big one. What are your weaknesses? Right? What are your opportunities? And what are your threats? I think the number one threat, if you're an owner operator, if you get sick or hurt, your school's gone in a month, right? Because if you can't teach, that school doesn't survive. So that's why I spent a lot of time once I saw that clearly, shoring up my schools where I wasn't dependent upon on the mat. If God took me tomorrow, they could outsource everything but the teaching. So I needed to get at least two guys, one for each location, in place. And that meant paying them top dollar, medical, retirement, vacation with pay, right? Did that eat into my profit? Yes. So when you come to me and say, I'm at a 50% net, yeah, but you're working 60 hours a week teaching, plus you're the janitor, plus your own bookkeeper, and you're missing every one of your kids' events. So that's the big threat. And that needs to change right away. Number two, I think in there, for me, my weaknesses. So we talked about hobby. Why do I define you as a hobby martial artist? Okay, because let's go to the beginning. Your first plateau is you became a great martial artist, right? That's whatever you believe that is. You loved it so much by default, or you became an instructor. Your instructor said, teach, you're a black belt, right? You got to impact lives, you're a black belt, spread the knowledge. You can only keep what you have by giving it away. Okay, all right. That third step, you know, is the hardest transition. Because if I really love martial arts and I'm a great martial artist, but I know I suck as a martial arts instructor, I at least have the fundamental skill set in place to do what? Learn to become a great teacher, right? We had that conversation with one of our mentoring um, partners, friends, clients, and they spoke mainly in adult language. That doesn't work for kids. You have to rethink that. So again, but because he's a great martial artist and a great martial arts instructor to adults, making those tweaks to talk to kids in kid language probably won't be that difficult because the foundation's already there. But in many cases, that great martial arts instructor, which you may or may not be, you might be teaching for somebody and you don't have the pressure of rent and all the rest, right? But you choose to open a martial arts school. The big gap is you're no longer a martial artist, right? Again, I'm a martial artist. I've got a fundamental skill set to build on becoming a great instructor. But it's night and day going from being a great martial arts instructor to a great small business owner. Especially if you've never owned a business. And in our industry, what happens? The kid inherits the school from the parent, right? That happens a lot. You take over a school for your instructor, great. Or you decide to strike out on your own. But please be infinitely clear, you great martial arts instructors. You are probably not even a white belt in business. You haven't even wrapped the white belt around you. You need to get business learning. Now, stay with me. And that could be in a community college, sure, right? That could be in the community college. That could be online. That could be a lot of things. But like the gentleman said yesterday, and I was humbled because these kind of words add up. He said, I have an MBA in business. And this call with you today, it was a group call, he says, is more valuable than my MBA. And I was like, whoa. And I think that's because, like the Harvard professor said to me when I was just at Harvard recently, he said, I teach because I can't do what you guys do. Okay. So the challenge with that, and we see it in our industry all the time. Somebody will come in with all this business sense. They've ran other successful franchises, and they try to open a martial arts school. So what are they lacking? They're not a great martial artist, and they're not a great martial arts instructor. Okay, key elements. But the yin to the yang, as I shared, is the great martial arts instructor that has no business sense, and they don't have enough common sense to go out there and get the learning. Now, learning is one thing. Knowing is different. You can only truly know something with applied application. Let's use the martial arts as an example, right? We can talk theory and concept all day long, but until we get on the mat and apply it, it means nothing. Through practical application, does it become true knowledge, or as I define it, wisdom? Learning and knowing are two completely different things. Two completely different things. So I want you to be mindful of that, because if you don't get that business learning, you will never, and I'm going to say that, and that's harsh, right? Never say never. You will never be successful. Never. Never. You'll probably have 50 to 100 students, and you'll always be at that level, right? So I'm harping on this because the huge gap, or the huge bridge between being a great martial arts instructor and a successful small business owner is light years. Such a huge gap. So you need to recognize that. So be it an online course, be it a business, or work with a mentor like me, right? You need somebody to educate you and teach you and hold you accountable, or you will fail. I see it every day. Every day. And I think part of it is we get a black belt. And when you get a black belt, I think there's a tremendous amount of accomplishment, but a tremendous amount of insecurity kicks in. Kick my butt when I'm a white belt, no big deal. I'm a black belt and you kick my butt, it's a bad day. I look bad. And I remember when my wife said that to me when I stopped sparring in the majority of my classes. You hurt somebody, you look bad. They hurt you, you look bad. It's a no-win situation, right? And every young buck wants to get in there and kick your buttons to say they're better than their teacher. I want my students better than me, by the way. So I watch so many people. One, they don't realize they need to learn business because it's going to save them, but they're blinded by that black belt. And somehow magically they believe, because they're a black belt, through osmosis, they're supposed to be good business people. Because a lot of the business decisions our industry makes, I'm perplexed. I have no idea why anybody in their right mind would make that business decision. Because at best, even with all the learning in business, it's an educated guess. If the pandemic didn't teach you that, I don't know what will. It's an educated guess. Things will happen to your business and you'll be like, what? What? Right? So that constant need to be able to make good, sound business decisions, and you better make no mistake, you're going to mess up, make tons of mistakes. So I want you to be mindful of that. But a great level-headed business person understands that. Businesses contract and make less money. Businesses expand and make more money. So get the business education if you want to get from a hobbyist to success in your life with it. Cool? So, okay, we recognize that. And where are you? Are you a great martial artist, but not a great instructor yet? Get the skill set. I'm a great martial arts instructor, but not a great business person. Get the skill set. And then the next level where I am today, and I still feel like I'm I don't know, maybe an intermediate student, is an entrepreneur. I want to take the money I make and create passive income, whether it's real estate, the stock market, gold, whatever you choose to do, more martial arts schools, with people running them and managing them, whatever that means. We don't get into business just to get by. We get into business so we can generate revenue to create passive income. That's what it's all about. That is what an entrepreneur does. You can't buy time, but if you do it right, you have freedom. Freedom. And that's what the event, It's Time Life Freedom, is all about, helping you create that freedom. So have I driven that one home? Okay, great. So now I've done my business plan. I'm taking business courses. I'm starting to save my pennies. This part's important because if you're a hobbyist, you probably don't have the money or the credit history to rent commercial property. Now, when I did San Francisco, my sister co-signed for me and she used her home as collateral. God rest her soul. I love my sister all to death. That was one of the greatest gifts she ever gave me, because in our family, nobody helped each other like that because we had no money. So I recognize that. Even when I opened Millbrae with over 15 years experience already renting a commercial property in San Francisco, on paper, I still needed to put up my house to get the 325K business line. Now, I didn't need all of it, but I needed a big enough line, smart business, to take care of all of my rent, all of my payroll, all of my marketing, all of my electricity, etc., for a year. That way, I could serve the community well and not be stressed out about rent each month. Because if you're worried about money, you start selling, you make bad choices. We're already on a shoestring budget to begin with, but I needed that peace of mind. And within a year, I paid it off and it no longer affected my home. Okay. But successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. That's all. That's all. And that's a huge difference from a hobbyist to being a successful business owner. You take calculated risk all the time. Okay. Now, next thing, and this is an important one, please. I know you want to open your school now. Okay. So maybe you start teaching out of the park and rec. Maybe you teach out of a health club because the thing you want to do is build a following, right? When I opened San Francisco, I had 100 kickboxers. I was at 3 different health clubs. I was teaching kids martial arts in the park and rec, right? And I was teaching kickboxing in a couple of martial arts schools because it was popular and everybody wanted cardio kickboxing. Remember when Taibo was big? All right. But I was able to open my doors with 100 students. That night and day. I had a Qigong teacher. I had a Tai Chi teacher. I had an Aikido, all these other smaller revenue streams because I didn't want to stress about making rent. I even had an esthetician on site doing massages and plucking eyebrows and that kind of stuff. Oh, I kid you not, because I knew it was smart business. But once I saw the light of day, I eliminated all of them, hyper focus, one martial arts. Okay. Second location, I was smarter. I had a big enough budget to be able to not have to make really bad decisions because I needed to make rent. So that leads me to the next part. It's real important that you save enough money for several things, especially if you're married with kids, right? You're going to be leaving your day job. How much income is going to need to replace that? 4,000 a month? 5,000 a month? I don't know how much you make a month, right? Let's just say $3,000. Okay? Plus, you're going to lose the medical that your whole family's getting now because you're the sole person working and your wife stay at home. Oh, well, I have to come up with medical insurance. Family of 4, $2,000, right? $2,000 here, anyways. All right, what else do I need? Rent, okay. What else? Electricity, food, clothing for my kids. So what I want you to do is write that number down for 1 to 3 years. And let's say I need to make 50,000 a year to take care of my family and everything. And that's low in California, but that might work some other part of the country. But let's just use that as a number. I want you to time that 50,000 by 3. Ideal. Now, could you shoestring it at 50,000 and white knuckle it for a year, right? And believe that you have the learning and a good plan that's going to get you into the you know, uh, out of the red into the black? Sure, sure, sure. But ideally, when I took that loan from Millbrae, I had a mortgage payment, I had 2 kids, and I was not going to compromise their lifestyle or anything. So I took the bigger loan, which required the risk of putting up my home as leverage. But I had $350,000, something like that. It was a good day. I opened my doors without sweating it, right? I didn't have 100 students when I opened Millbrae, but I had the money for marketing, everything in place. We're at 285 at the end of year 1. Got rid of the loan, everything. I know, right? 285 in year 1 is a lot. It's a lot. But that number I actually had in mind was 300. 300. 300, right? So I want you to have money. Then, if you're going to go commercial, you have to make that decision. If you don't have commercial renting history, leasing is correct. You don't rent in commercial, you lease. Then you're probably going to have to leverage your home. That's it. That's the way it goes. I don't have a home. Well, in my case, my sister, again, God rest her soul, she co-signed the lease and she put up her home as collateral. There you go. Because if you think you're magically going to walk in and just rent a place, it's not going to happen. If it's somewhere in rural parts of the country and it's $800 for 2,000 square feet, you might get away with that. I did that in San Bernardino when I was 18. I went down there and rented I don't know, 1,000 square feet for $500 a month, and they had no problem renting it to me, right? None, because it's not huge. But in a real commercial property where you see Starbucks and all the rest, no. You have to qualify for that. So I think that's a big misconception too. People think they're just going to rent commercial property. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to qualify for that. And in today's world of ChatGPT, go down that rabbit hole. Just do a real reality check. What would it take for me to lease 2,000 square feet in this complex that I want to open a school in? Go for it. Because you don't want to go to the leasing agent and say, what would it take to get me in there? I wouldn't do that. If you're going to go to negotiations with a commercial leasing company, you better cross your T's and dot your I's. I can't express that enough. Your ability to go in and negotiate well helps influence. Remember, they're just people, right? You'd like to think, oh, big commercial leasing, right? They lease this mall and everything else. When the day's done, they're just people. They say Happy New Year and they celebrate birthdays and all the rest, but you look at them as maybe here because you don't have the real learning to converse with them on that level. I know, right? It's a little harsh, but I really want to prepare you because I think what's going to help our industry tremendously is that we can get the hobby businesses to behave professionally. If I can get that guy in the middle that says he owns a business, but he really doesn't, he's created a job for himself and he's a terrible boss and he's maybe on a good year taking home 60K, get you up to that next level. Because unfortunately, the 2,800 that are making 90% of the revenue, that doesn't cut it. That does not cut it because we're fighting. It's an uphill battle with these guys that they post at Bushido every day doing some weird stuff, and they're teaching martial arts. There's a full-born every day. And if you want to sit there and say I'm a martial arts teacher, because you don't need a license or anything. So someone can be out there posting videos doing some weird, I don't know, some weird stuff. Some guy's doing that now. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And he's actually got a couple students and they're out there doing the same stuff he is. Okay. Who am I to say? Who am I to say on any given day? Who knows what would work in the martial arts? But it is an uphill battle. It really is. And most of it centers around our, I'm going to say, ignorance of what it really takes to run a professional business, what it really takes to create a purpose driven business, and what it takes to understand the demographic that you serve, and what it takes to revamp your curriculum again and again and again until you're creating a user experience that empowers people and fulfills what they genuinely need from us. That's hard. That's really, 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 really hard. Um, so that's the next step. You got to save, okay? You got to save. And doubling back to your business plan, 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years, you got to have that mapped out. Because if you're going to try to go to the bank and get an SBA, you need to be clear on that. And if you present it well, because when the day's done, if I'm going to give you money in an SBA, it's still hypothetical. If the majority of small businesses fail, then I know that in the Small Business Association. So who am I going to choose to loan money to, knowing that there's a good chance they're not going to ever pay me back? Now, don't get me wrong. The SBA has insurance. You default on that SBA loan, they're going to collect it somehow, some way, whether they get it from you or they get it through the insurance. Okay? So know that too. But if I cross my T's, I dot my I's, and I present a very professional business plan, and it's laid out well, and it's not just as hypothetical, and that's what I did with Millbrae. I used Topkick as my model, and they're on the East Coast. But Topkick, same revenue, same household income, pretty much mirrored San Francisco and Millbrae. I was able to share, here's the service-based business doing ABC, right? Because I never owned a second school yet. And I was able to use some of that data to correlate with what I'm projecting. These projections I put, what we're going to make in the first year, second year, third year in Millbrae, weren't just hypothetical and made up. They drew some real data of somebody that had done it, whose demographic, whose environment was very, very, very similar to ours. So that had weight. And that's, again, plus my home, right? As collateral, I was able to get 300, I think it was 350. I don't think it was 325. So I know this is a lot to take in. It really, really is. If you're here, put something in the comments. Tell me your big takeaway from today's Success Never Sleeps that's going to help you. I've got a deep, deep commitment to you because the hobbyist martial artist who really loves martial arts but knows nothing about business, you deserve to make this your life. You deserve to impact more people, right? You deserve not to work a day job and be able to do this. You with me? You with me? So put it in the comments. What are your big takeaways today? And I put on my glasses so I can see your comments, all right? Again, I want to celebrate Noah Seidel, who is at 200 active students. I'm so happy for him. I think he said he's billing out 29,000 a month now. That is so cool. That is so, so, so cool. Right? And you can do it too. I mean, but it was very strategic. And we had that conversation yesterday. Take a moment, celebrate, go to a steak dinner. But here's what needs to happen next. Right? We got to revamp your website. That's got to be done. We got to lean into your Google business page. Hey, Alan. That's a good one, Alan. How do SBA lenders assess martial arts businesses? To be honest with you, Alan, very harshly. Very harshly. If I'm opening a McDonald's franchise, proven, 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 right? If I'm open, well, I'd actually open a Chick-fil-A. They're doing 9 million. Chick-fil-A does $9 million a year, where McDonald's is averaging about 2 million a year. Yeah, a franchise, Alan. And so again, they scrutinize us hard, hard. That's why, look at my situation, Alan. Here I was 15 years into San Francisco. I'd been paying on a commercial lease for 15 years. I had taxes, my tax returns showed we were generating $1 million a year at a 35% net. And I still couldn't walk into that bank and get an SBA for $325,000 without leveraging my home. Right? And I'm going, what the heck? How is that? I've been commercially renting for 15 years. I'm making 350K a year, right? Now, I'm sure if I went in for 100,000 or something, that was doable. But the thing about that, that's it where we hear the term, Alan, bootstrapping, right? I don't want to bootstrap. So I'd rather you patiently save the money for your own personal expenses for 3 years and your operating expenses for 3 years, because that is the cushion you're going to need. Most businesses, even successful ones, function in the red for 3 to 5 years. Look at the data. Do I think we got lucky in Millbrae going from 0 to 285 in 1 year? No. I sat with people like Roland Osborne. I had sat with business people. I really looked at all the pitfalls, everything involved. I knew what kind of money I needed to. My sign was $16,000 in Millbrae, Allen. I was in a much different position financially. San Francisco, I opened with $40,000 of 4 or 5 different friends' money. And we were all on K1s. I bought them out in 3 years. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But I had 100 students and I could make rent from day one. But I still wouldn't recommend doing it that way. So again, Alan, if you come in very, very professional, really, really good business plan, real data. Here's my business model. Here's my culture. Here's my type of martial arts school. It's exactly the same as this guy over here. Same demographic, same number of elementary schools around them, right? Same anchor stores, a 24-hour fitness, a Starbucks, a Subway sandwich, whatever. If you can show a business that's exactly like you want to behave, that helps a lot, because when the day is done and you're getting an SBA and you're a new business, at best, is it a calculated guess on the SBA side? Yes, that's all it is. It's a calculated guess. And along with that comes the risk, right? Comes the risk. So that's the short answer for that, Alan. But again, the better prepared you are, documentation, everything, the better chance an SBA lender will assess your business, whether it's a martial arts or a dry cleaner, in a much better light. Okay? Cool? All right, next question. Anybody? Thank you for that question, Alan. It's a good one. It's a good one, right? We need more good operators. And I know there's tons of hobby operators out there with the right learning, the right teaching, if they're that dedicated to being a successful business owner, you're going to get this learning. I didn't have it at one time. I just got the learning. But fortunately, I think the applied learning is why I sit with such confidence and deliver this to you. I didn't just learn it out of a book. I applied it again and again and again. So it has merit, right? I think it has legit merit. And I don't think anything I'm suggesting is unreasonable, is it? No, it's good, sound business. And you need that. I can't believe 2,800, right, martial arts school owners is making 90% of the wealth. That's insane. That's insane. But data doesn't lie, right? Data does not lie. Add them up. How many $1 million operators do you know out there? Right? Think about that. Think about that. And that's what it takes. I mean, that's genuinely what it takes. If you're going to save for retirement, pay off your home, put your kids through college, go on vacation, have guys that can live, with the martial arts career you create for them. I believe 300 students is just the beginning of that. And if I do the math, let's say hypothetically, we have 300 students times $200 a month. That's 60,000 times 12. That's 720,000. So on the low end, that's me, it's $1 million, because my rent's higher here, everything's higher here, right? You have 300 students at $200 a month, that's 720,000. Payroll should be 35%, like a great restaurant. So what's payroll? What's 35% of that? Right? That's going to be 400 and no, that's not right. 180,000 is your payroll. Could you have a top tier guy that you're paying that kind of money to to run your school? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? So again, nobody likes numbers. I like numbers. My buddy Tule at my studio taught me about numbers, 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 and the value of numbers. I hated the numbers. What's your numbers? What's your numbers? And I don't like vanity metrics. I don't care if I have close to 1,000 students doing $2 million a year. What matters is how much I take home, how much I net, and what I do with that. Am I netting and taking that net income and turning it into more money? That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. So I'm not into vanity metrics at all, at all. And I learned that the hard way. I used to think I was all that in a bag of potato chips, right? $1 million a year. That's not a lot of money. It's simply not. Especially where I'm at here in California. It's not. It's nothing. Next question before we wrap this big dog up. Put in your question. I'm going to start slowing things down here. We want to begin by thanking our sponsors, of course. We have Tusaw, we have Market Muscles, My Studio, Kids Love Life Skills, LC Accounting, and Kin Create. Oh, wait, there it is, Marco. And Kin Creative. Again, I just shared that passionately in a discovery call today. I love working with people I love. I'm 63. I got more years behind me than in front of me, and that's just a fact. I want to hang out with people and impact our martial arts community, but I want to do it with people I love. And all of these people here, I can tell you I love them. They're good people. They have good business practices, and they will truly impact and help you achieve your version of success. So any of them, check them all out. If you have questions about them, feel free to reach out to me. Alan, so what do you think underwriters want to see in our systems or numbers that separate us from passion-based hobbyists to more of a lender-ready operator? I love it, Alan. That's power. Bottom line is, money talks, BS walks, sir. That's why even in my situation, I knew my number. I wanted $325,000. I wanted that, sir. So I had to leverage my home. That's a hard asset. That's something they could take and sell and recoup their losses. Everything else we know, I don't care how great the business plan is, it's hypothetical. It truly is. Even with the numbers I had from San Francisco, which were solid, right? Think about that. $1 million a year, 35% net. I was taking home $350,000. Even with that said, what do most lenders do? Well, if you're, taking home 350 minus your personal expenses, et cetera, your property tax, you can afford to pay us this much a month. I'll give you $100,000 loan. And that's basically was the first conversation. Because all they're going to look at, Alan, when the day's done, you're right, passion's passion. I look at the numbers. They were based upon Top Kicks numbers on the East Coast. Perfect, model for what we're going to do. Bottom line is, those are still Top Kicks numbers. They're not yours. Bottom line, those are your San Francisco numbers. You have no history in Millbrae. Bottom line, you have a house. We can take that. So when the day's done, I think a better business plan helps weed you out from the rest of the people. But at some point, they need some type of hard asset. And again, risk and reward, right? When I opened San Francisco with 100 students, my sister co-signed that lease. What did she have to leverage? Her home. Her home. Everybody wants to get into commercial property, right? Because location, location, location. I want to be next to a Starbucks and a Trader Joe's, things like that. Those anchor stores drive traffic to me, right? And they've done the demographic study. Millbrae is in what used to be, what do they call it? Not Gymboree. What was the kids' gym? But it's one of the franchises, right? Of those kid gymnastics places. So I knew they had done the demographic study. Nobody's going to allow you to open a franchise, a kid-centric franchise, unless they've done the homework. That's it, right? So we were Little Gym. That's what it was called, Little Gym. And so I knew, and I used to take my kids to Little Gym, and it's a franchise. They do little tumbling and all that. I said to my wife, if we have this location, we would blow it up. And she goes, well, how do you know that? I said, well, look, there's a Little Gym here. They've already done the demographic study. And once I uncovered it, we have 3 elementary schools within a 3-mile radius, a dozen preschools, I don't know how many after-school programs, 12. The household income was like 144K. 60% of the homeowners were parents with young children. The band played on, right? It was a perfect storm. Plus, Alan, we were in the community. My kids were just entering the school district. So our connection to the PTA, principals, everything else, all of it was in place. All of it was in place. So it was a perfect storm. So I knew we could get to, I thought 300 in year one. But even with all that said, Alan, hard assets, sir. Hard assets. Because you're right. A passion-based hobbyist is not going to get a loan. And then when I did the entrepreneur program at City College, that's what I told them. Because they do a pitch like Shark Tank, right? And I taught the class. I didn't teach it. I came in and did a 3-hour workshop. Then I sat on the judging board as these college kids pitched their deck. I said, my challenge is, your deck is just a deck. That's all it is. When the day's done, if I'm going to invest money into your business, I'm really investing money in you. That's it. That's it. So again, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, having a great business plan, you walking in there, dressed well and educated and presenting your Shark Tank version to the SBA is still mindful. When the day's done, they're bean counters. They're, pencil pushers. They have no emotion. They have no passion for what you want to do. They don't care. They're going to look at hard assets. I know, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do all that homework, Alan. It doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare properly. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get the business education, because successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. That's it, sir. So I got the business learning and I applied it so I can tell you what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But at the end of the day, I tell people, don't listen to me, don't listen to anybody. The empowerment of small business and entrepreneurship is you falling down, you getting up, you making mistakes, you learning. And somehow, some way, if you truly want to become a legitimate business owner, then you'll get the learning you need, sir. That's it. That's it. Cool. So I want you to watch this one a bunch of times today. I really, really do, because I'm just appalled that a majority of that 14,000 are probably still hobbyist business. Just on paper, they got a business license and they have a business address, and that business address could be their home. They're teaching out of their garage. There's more of that in our industry. We did the math. There's about 2,800 real operators making real money, right? I'd probably say it's a little higher, about 4,000. If I look out there and, one service website guy is 2,000. This guy over here has 2,000. And that's it. And the two biggest web people in the industry. We probably have 4,000 people making real money, right? I mean, data doesn't lie. So please think about that. And please think about joining me for It's Time Life Freedom, November 8th through 11th, right here in Millbrae, California, right? Stay for 1 day, 2 days, or 4 days. I am not a consultant. I am an operator just like you. I suffer when people quit. I get sad, right? When people quit, I go through what you go through. And me and my team, all operators who are in the trenches on a daily basis, will be there. And it's not 2 days in Vegas with a bunch of glitz and glam, and you can like, ooh, look at me at this event. No, we get down and dirty. 4 days. Come spend it with us, and I promise it'll change your life. But if you can absolutely not, do 1 day or 2. But don't miss out on earning the freedom you deserve. Cool? All right. How to find me? Easy, easy, easy. Right? I'm at all podcasts is everywhere you can find a podcast. YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. Follow me at Instagram. For everything else, go to brandonbeliso.com. Cool. Thank you so much today. Thank you, DeMarco, holding down the fort as always. I am Brandon Beliso. Oh, do you see that? What did I do? Did I do something cool? What did that sound effect mean? There you go. This is Success Never Sleeps. Until we talk again, please, you go out there, live your best life.